Actually, the first thing I'll ask you to do is if you this will be the only time you look at the camera, but if you could just introduce yourself and tell us what class and grade and where we're at.
My name is Jennifer Lewner. It's a 6th grade math class at the Scholars Academy in Rockaway Park, Queens, New York. It's an application-based school, so the students are slightly accelerated, and we are on a full Common Core aligned curriculum.
All right, good start. All right, so here we go. We want to understand the decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit and year. How does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge, what was taught before this lesson, and what will come after it?
So this lesson falls 2/3 of the way through the unit. So the unit that the students are working on is expressions and equations. And we're covering all of the 6 EE standards within this unit right now. So before this lesson, we really focused on what an equation is, what does a variable represent, and we're going to move into, for the last third of the unit, independent versus dependent. So this was kind of a intro to independent versus dependent for them.
Excellent. So let's talk about the standards or cluster targeted in this lesson. And what did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard or cluster?
So this lesson is a major concept within a major domain for the year, which is the expressions and equations domain. Having the focus on the algebraic vocabulary throughout the unit so far, for 2/3 of the way through, has definitely helped them prepare for what an equation is and how to be able to identify the variables for the real life situations.
All right. Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplified, and how did you plan for this?
This lesson definitely hits core action number 2 because of the assessments provided throughout the lesson. So there are multiple formative assessment points throughout the lesson. Students are using whiteboards to do a quick assess from whiteboard drills. There's an assessment from the pre to the post assessment, and students are doing a self-reflection at home on their own to self-assess what points of the lesson they felt best helps them for the post-assessment.
Excellent. All right, that's part 1 down. Part 2. We are interested in how the shifts required by the CCSS are being incorporated into your classroom. Discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
So the lesson is definitely an incorporation of knowing the procedural and fluency behind what an algebraic equation is. So they need to have strong fluency with what a variable is and how to solve an equation before even getting into this lesson. The lesson is definitely heavier on the application side because they need to be able to apply the equations to real life situations. And vice versa, take a real life situation and then develop an algebraic equation for it.
All right. And how did you teach the content of this lesson prior to the CCSS? What is the same and what is different?
So before the Common Core standards, it was definitely much more procedural based. I would give them the definitions. I would give them a couple of straightforward examples that were much more numerical type of equations. Ask them maybe to pick a value for a variable and just substitute it in, or possibly set it up with a table. And I definitely don't think that I had the real life situations attached to the equations. So prior to the Common Core, it was more about them just understanding independent versus dependent, identifying it, but not making that real life connection.
All right. So far, so good. So student engagement is critical to the work of the CCSS. We want to understand how you ensure that all students had the opportunity to productively engage in the work of the lesson. So how did the students handle this lesson? Did they understand the mathematics of this lesson, and how do you know?
I definitely feel that they understood the basics they needed to behind the lesson, and that comes from the prior knowledge they walked in here with. So definitely from spending a majority of the time so far in this unit on focusing on what a variable is and what an equation is, and the difference between an equation and an expression helps them tremendously. The focus of the lesson is to uncover misconceptions. So some of those misconceptions had been uncovered from the pre-assessment, and I'm aware that there'll still be misconceptions around this concept looking at the post-assessment. So that's where the last planning piece for the unit will come in. We'll be incorporating those misconceptions from the post-assessment to make sure that they're addressed for the remaining part of the unit.
Excellent. So explain how you differentiated in this lesson. Did all students have the opportunity to work on grade level content?
So the lesson is differentiated based on their groupings. So they were grouped based on their pre-assessments and common misconceptions that they made. Then, while they were working on the task, I had pre-developed questions for the students that I wrote out on index cards. So the common trend that I saw that students were getting tied up on was choosing the incorrect variable and not reading what the variable represented. So I would pass a question to those groups to help them along. Other supports that were in place were they had access to the class website, and on the class website there are multiple supports, old lessons, vocabulary. The vocabulary is also up in the classroom, and it was provided as a hard copy if they needed it.
Which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify?
I need a little help with Core Action 3 off the top of my head. Should I look it up?
Yeah, if you want to look
Okay.
it up. If you can't find it or whatever. I'm always a little hazy on it as well.
I had looked at them this morning beforehand when I picked out Core Action 2.
Yeah.
Math practices. Okay.
Do you want me to ask the question again?
Yeah.
Alright, so which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson?
So from Core Action 3, the students, a major focus of the task, both when we did a whole class task and when they were in their triad groups, is definitely the explaining portion. It wasn't just enough for them to be able to make the matches or to solve an equation or choose an equation, but really to be able to explain the variables, how they're being represented with the real life situation provided to them. Also, the feedback piece was huge, I think, for them because I'm giving them feedback based on their pre-assessment, and they have the opportunity to talk to students who made similar mistakes or had similar misconceptions to try to clear that up before moving forward.
Excellent. Alright, last two. Reflecting on the lesson, what worked particularly well and what might you do differently?
So as far as what went well for the lesson, I feel that the activity itself is a very well-developed activity and really focuses on the shifts, and it focuses on the mathematical practices because it's focusing on having the students explain, yet getting at the conceptual idea of algebraic equations. And it was also designed so that there's different activities within the group. So they had group work, there was whole class discussion, there was individual work time. I think something that is always challenging about a lesson like this with so many different moving pieces is the timing. And not having the time for the students to fully finish the post-assessment and to possibly do a peer feedback. So it's always a struggle to try to get the students to do a peer feedback at the end. And that would have been a piece I would have liked to have seen here at the end of this lesson.
All right. Were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions?
I mean, just the videotaping in general, or is that okay to say? Definitely their reaction, this was the first time for them to be videotaped. I was surprised that they were so comfortable and willing to be a little off task about the activity. But overall, I think that they really responded well to everything. You know, they prompted their own questions, which I was really happy about, and they weren't afraid to question something, even though there were multiple cameras set up in the room. So.
Perfect.
Okay.
That was so easy. All right. Well, you are done.
Okay.